Hello, my name's Andrew Gregson. I'm the host of Chamber Talk, and today we have our special guest, Larry Mandell from Training Refund Group. Hi, Larry. Welcome for coming today.
Thank you. Enjoy being here.
So the reason why I've asked Larry to be on our show today is a couple of years back I had the pleasure of meeting Larry first when I joined the Chamber. And at the time, our past CEO, Teresa Harvey, and Larry had been working on a program to help businesses receive more money through the ETP funding program. So throughout the last couple of years, I've still been working with Larry, of course, and we've actually ourselves had to write out a good, huge amount of checks. In fact, over the last year, I think Larry's done over $400,000 worth of refunds going back to, I don't know if refunds is the right word, Larry, but going back to these partners who've signed up to be part of this program. So that's why we've got Larry here today, and he's going to go through why this program may work for you, what it can do, and how important it is. So straight off, Larry, let's start by sharing a little bit about actually Training Refund Group and what you guys do.
Okay, well, thank you. We started this company about 10 years ago, and the idea was there's money available from the state of California to help companies pay for employee training. The state was looking for ways to make it more competitive, given that our costs are higher in California than in other states. And so the governor at the time, which was Jerry Brown in his first stint, looked at costs that companies have, and state couldn't do anything about labor, machinery and equipment, cost of materials, things like that. But one of the things they thought they could do is help companies improve the skills of their employees. And by doing this, they'd be able to produce a better product at a slightly less cost, maybe not as reduced as other states, but we could provide better value between the product and the customer service that we could deliver. So in 1982, the Employment Training Panel was developed, and over this past 40 years, they've given away over $1.8 billion. We saw this as an opportunity to help companies get the money because it's a very unknown program. And we've been bringing this to companies for the past 10 years. We've done about 300 projects, and our clients have probably picked up about $12 to $15 million at this point.
Well, that's amazing. Congratulations. And on behalf of the business world, thank you very much. That's awesome. Excuse me. So many business owners may not be actually familiar with ETP, the Employment Training Program. You mind sharing a quick breakdown of what it does for folks and what it is?
Okay. So in almost every business, you have to train your employees. Particularly somebody comes in, they have no experience in your business, you have to train them. And this becomes a very expensive process. Mm-hmm. So what the state or the ETP program does, it looks at what kind of training you need to provide. Now, you determine the training courses that your people need. You determine how much time they need to be trained, whether it's the initial training or continuing training as either laws change, the product changes, people want to move up in the company with better skills. All of these things ETP recognizes. And so what they will do is they will pay a fixed amount, typically $23 an hour, for every hour of employee training. So, for example, if you have 10 people in a 1-hour class, that would be 10 hours of training. Mm-hmm. And right now, the refund amount of how much they'll pay is $23.
Right.
So that's one way that ETP will help fund the course. We look over a period of years. Typically, a company's going to receive about $750 per employee that's in the program.
Right.
So that's the value. The companies have to do the training, regardless of whether ETP existed or not.
Right.
Got to train your employees.
Yeah.
What the ETP program does is help to minimize your cost in bringing that forward.
And I'm assuming there are stipulations of who can sort of like apply for this type of thing? And how do you determine who you can help?
Okay, so there's a couple of rules and qualifications. There are certain industries that ETP prefers to see, and they would be in areas like manufacturing, construction, healthcare, some communications, and agriculture are the main industries that ETP is looking to fund. The entertainment industry, obviously, because of Hollywood, is one of the big areas as well. So that's the starting point. From there, they start looking at what is the population you're looking to train. ETP's goal is to provide skills or to fund skills training to help people move up in the workplace. So there's a couple things that go on. One of them is they want to make sure that these are full-time jobs. And they're not looking for companies that have massive turnover. They bring somebody in and then they terminate them shortly thereafter. So the length or the turnover issue is something that's important for involuntary turnover, people that were fired versus quit on their own. The second thing they look at is what are the wages you are paying. They're looking to increase high-wage, high-paying jobs. And so one of the things that we need to go through is how much do you pay your employees? And it varies depending on the industry and where you're located in the state. So a company may be located here, let's say in Fullerton, but they may have other offices throughout the state. And each of those different areas have wages that need to be met.
Now, you made it sound quite a simple process there, but obviously it isn't. Let's talk a little bit, going back a little bit to Training Refund Group. You know, on your website, you proudly claim about the fact that you've got 100% approval success rate, which is fantastic. So why would we come to you? Why should a member feel, you know what, or a business feel that, well, this is going to be a lot of time, like how much time is it going to take if I try and do it myself compared to just letting this company take care of it for me?
Well, let me start with this statement. The agency itself recommends that a company use a consultant at least for their first project.
That's smart.
Yes. Even after 10 years and 300 projects, there are still details that we're learning. And so there's two parts to the project. The initial part is the application, putting that together so that you maximize the amount of money that ETP will provide. And I should probably start at this point and say, this is a pay-for-performance project. It's not a grant. So ETP will approve a certain amount of money, but you actually earn it by doing the training. So we go through the application. We come up with realistic numbers that ETP, or amounts of money that ETP will approve. If an application comes in with wild numbers that are not able to be substantiated, then they'll degrade the application. So the first thing we do, we understand the process of getting the application approved. We know how to make it the language that ETP is looking for and what they want to see. And so that's the first thing that we do, is get the application approved. The second part becomes the administrative portion. Okay, and everything that we submit to ETP has to be documented. So earlier I talked about a class that's 10 people for 1 hour. What we need to have as documentation is a sign-in sheet that shows the people were actually there. Okay, and we take that documentation, we enter it into our internal system, and then from there we upload it to the ETP site so that they have a record, a documented record of the training that was done. That is also a time-consuming process.
I remember also there was we were getting interviewed. It was like a day worth of interviews, wasn't there, with ETP as well? That's another part, wasn't it?
There's some time that is spent with ETP. Typically what I tell a client is on the front end to get the application done, it's between 4 and 6 hours of company time. Once we get into the actual program, assuming that we're managing it, it's another hour to an hour and a half a month. Most of this work you're already doing. If you're training, every company I've ever met has the employees sign in so they know who was there.
Who did it, right.
Right. And so what we ask for at the end of each month, scan all those rosters and email them to us, and then we'll take care of all the tracking.
Right.
So we will do about 90 to 95% of the work over the course of the project, and then you'll get paid.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you talked about the types of industries that they're looking to do. Training, is a particularly types of training they can do, or is it a very broad spectrum?
It's a very broad spectrum. So let me first start with what they won't pay for.
That'll be clever.
So the things that they won't pay for are training that's required by law. For example, sexual harassment.
Right.
Okay. Or violence in the workplace. They won't pay for that because you are mandated to do
that, right.
Okay. Other things that they don't want to pay for is anything that's required to get a license. For example, CPAs. They have to do a certain amount of training every year to maintain their license. ETP won't pay for that. They are, depending on the industry, they're very conservative with safety training. But if you're a construction company, a great deal of what you do is safety training. So they look at the industry. Another thing that they don't want to pay for is anything that would be personal in nature. For example, somebody wants to take a course in anger management.
Right.
They won't pay for that. But now let's talk about what they will pay for.
Right.
So the three main areas that we look at, there are business skills, computer skills, and then we'll call them commercial skills. Business skills would be anything, any type of soft skill that you need to train people on. Process improvement, communications, presentation skills, time management, anything like that, customer service, anything like that is what ETP would call business skills. They will pay for that. Secondly, computer skills, anything that is software related that you need to train your staff on in order for them to be able to do their job. The third thing becomes commercial skills. Depending on your industry, it can range from construction, how to use the equipment, how to safely manage a work site. Okay. In a manufacturing process, it could be hazmat, it could be OSHA 10 and 30, it could be hazardous communications, it could be maintaining a piece of equipment or how to safely use that piece of equipment, how to work through production lines. If it's a food company, food manufacturer, sterilization processes. All of these different types of training, ETP will pay for because it's things you have to do in order to produce your product or service. So that's what ETP is really looking at. What are the things that you need to do to get your team up to speed or keep them current with the products that you're using, or as they want to grow into management or expanded roles, any of the training that needs to be done.
Now, you've touched on some great points there, and one of the things are when you're listening to this and you're unaware, and you're mentioning things like manufacturing and service industry and this that and sort of thing. Automatically, you're thinking, these huge corporations. But is there a size that somebody has to particularly be? Because it's not necessarily we're all looking at the Elon Musk type of manufacturers. Are we looking at local, smaller sized? Where does it start from, do you think?
The big question really is how much training does somebody receive?
All right, okay.
Okay. So on average, I would say that it should be at least a 20 to 25 person company to make it worthwhile for the company's time. Otherwise, be better off improving the company.
Right.
But there are some clients I've had that are 20 people, but they do 40 to 50 hours of training each year per person.
Right.
Okay. And then I've had some that are 50 and they only spend 10 hours of training.
Right.
Okay. So that is really the key question. How much training do they have to do? How technical is the product that they're making? As an example, one of my clients used to make compressed natural gas cylinders, okay? And everything had to be very precise. How they were machining the equipment, how they were putting it together, because when they had a failure rate, it was called a firebomb. So training was very important, and follow-up to make sure that everything was done properly. And they kept very strict records on where people were in the process. So anything above 25 is really typically a good client, especially if a good fit for the ETP system.
Right. And then let's get on to the important bit, right? So we've gone through the program. You've been keeping in contact with both the businesses, and I also know, because I have to be on those emails, how many times you have to go backwards and forwards with ETP and getting all the right bits and pieces in there. So towards the tail end of it, when a company's giving you everything they need to do, you know it's all going through, how does a company get its money back? What's that process? Walk us through that.
Fair enough. So we've done all the work. We've submitted all the training rosters. We've used all the money that was appropriated. So now we have to go through the process of what's called a closeout. And in that, ETP wants to make sure that everybody's a full-time employee. And I didn't mention that earlier, but it only applies to full-time employees.
Okay.
So what we need is wage information from them for each employee. Then I take that information, we put it all together, I submit invoices to ETP, and it's not a fast process. It's government giving money away, even though this is one of those agencies that gets graded based on how much of their budget actually gets used.
Wow.
Okay, so ETP in the current fiscal year is $125 million to give away. Okay, how successful they are in giving it away and getting it used is how some of the executives in ETP get their bonus. So they want to make sure that this money goes out.
Right.
Again, it's a slow process. Eventually you get it. But the way I sort of look at it is it's free money. Everything that you're doing in this program, you have to do anyway.
Right.
You've got to train your employees. You already take the rosters or the sign-in sheets, and the only thing that you're adding is you're sending them to us. So for the 20 or 25 hours that you may put into this program, typically companies are generating, if we're looking at the time versus the returns, it's usually between $500 to $1,000 per hour for all the administrative time, and frequently it's secretarial time that is spent getting us this information and going through. Now, you mentioned the emails that you see back and forth, and if you'll remember, rarely did you need to answer any of those because
you did it.
I'm getting carboned on that email, and they're really expecting me to answer the question because I'm the one who knows what's going on with the program far more than
anyone else
than you did, or even in some of my, for any of my clients. I know more about what's going on, and I also understand what ETP is asking.
100%. And I would like to add there, by the way, to the listeners who you're thinking, oh, should I really do this or not? You know what? Larry is that good at this, and his company know that what they're doing so well is through those emails, they were actually now and again, like to say, sort of schooling some of the people from ETP, as into correcting them or steering them in the right direction, saying, you already have that information, this is the type of information you should be asking for. So they really do know what they're doing, and we've seen those things. So let's take us on to that next stage, which is sort of like, how do we start? So we've got somebody out there, they're thinking, well, do I fall into this category? Do I not? Don't walk away and make your own decision. How do they get a hold of you, Larry? What should they do?
Okay, so easiest way is either to send me an email or give me a call.
Excellent. So what's your email, Larry?
So the email is larrymandell, LARRYMANDELL, at trgrefund.com.
And the number they should call?
714-238-9049.
Excellent.
An initial call is usually about 15 minutes, and we can make a determination whether or not this makes sense for you.
And what type of information should they have at hand for that initial call? So then everybody's not wasting anybody's time, right?
I like to know what kind of training that you're doing.
Okay.
How many people do you have in the company? And maybe a little bit of a breakdown. Is it field staff? Are they in the office? Production staff, things like that. I'll have researched. If I get an email from you, I'll have researched the company, so I'll have a little bit better understanding of what you do, and then I can have a little bit more targeted questions. But then in that first 15 minutes, we should have a pretty good idea. And also wage ranges. That would also be helpful. And in that first 15 minutes, we can make a decision whether or not this warrants a more detailed conversation or meeting, or this is not something that will fit into the way you do business, or it just doesn't make sense for the company.
Now, everybody says, well, nobody works for free, right? So let's touch on that, because sometimes people might have questions about that too. You want to share a little bit about that part?
Sure. We charge a fee to do the application unless they're a member of the chamber. And if they're a member, we waive that fee. And then for handling all the administrative work, we charge 13% for taking care of all of that. That's a state-regulated amount. Everybody pays it. And then what we do at the end, when you're starting to write checks, if they're part of the Chamber's project, then our fee is deducted from that, and you receive a net check.
Yeah.
If we're working with you individually, then you'll receive the money from ETP, and we would invoice it. But I've got to say, ETP is trying to get everybody to move into these multi-employer contracts like the one that the Chamber has.
Yeah.
And the biggest benefit is this is a slow process of approval.
Right.
But they are pushing the Chamber projects through faster than if somebody is doing it on their own. The Chamber, we can probably get approved in 4 months. And if you're doing it individually, it's going to be 9 to 12 months.
And it makes sense, because it's all, I've seen it myself, the way it's all filters through, and they're a lot more happier just sort of like working through it all, aren't they?
It's just faster.
Yeah,
it's easier.
I've seen it. Well, is there anything, as we're wrapping this up, because this has been a good 20 minutes, and of course, some folks will be going, oh, okay, I need to go look it up right now. So is there anything else that maybe we might have missed, Larry, that you feel like might be important?
Well, first, I would suggest somebody go look at the ETP website. So it's the Employment Training Panel, or etp.ca.gov. It gives you a little bit of a rundown on the program, and it verifies that there is actually a program called this.
Yeah.
But the way that I look at it more than anything else, it's free money. As one chairperson of, there's actually an ETP panel comprised of 8 people. And as the chairperson, 2 different chairpersons have said, it's free money, people. It's a gift. Okay? You're taking advantage of a gift. From a individual company standpoint, it's probably the most profitable thing they can do.
So again, one more time, if you're really interested in this and want to find out more, which I encourage you really should, because it really is money coming back into your pockets that you would have spent otherwise, and usually would just have to concur those costs. How do they email you again, Larry?
Okay, so first go to our website, Training Refund Group, or trgrefund.com.
Right.
And they can contact me, Larry Mandell, LARRYMANDELL, at trgrefund.com, 714-238-9049. 888-238-9049.
There you go. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. And Larry, thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And we hope you'll visit nocchamber.com and select Sign Up for News at the top of the page to join our mailing list. For more interviews, visit chambertalk.podbean.com, and we invite you to like, follow, share Chamber Talk.